Welcome! I'm Kim Conrow. I'd like to take you on a tour of my North Texas native garden. It is self-certified as a wildlife habitat through the National Wildlife Federation and as a monarch way station by Monarch Watch. We're located in the Cross Timbers and Prairies ecoregion of Texas. So there we are, just south of Fort Worth. We live on 2.5 acres of what was once the Fort Worth or Grand Prairie. Our front garden soil is alkaline with rocks clay. It sits about 10 feet higher than the backyard garden, which is mixed prairie soils, and we have a wildscape in the far back. Over the past 24 years, we've developed a garden with pathways, a small thicket area, and a meadow. You'll see a selection of around 60 native plants. Some have been seeded, some planted, and almost half of them are gifts of nature. For a native garden, here's the goal. You want to have 70 to 80% native plants. Remember to plan for leaf consumption on your host plants from immature insects, which are often bird food, especially for young birds. And you want to have 3 seasons of nectar to support the butterflies, bees, and hummingbirds. Having lots of different kinds of plants that bloom in different seasons creates biodiversity. Spring! We are awakening from our winter rest, renewed, refreshed, and ready to bloom. And what's a spring more than bluebonnets? Every species of bluebonnets are considered our Texas state flower, as our Texas state flower. But before these picturesque blooms arrive, another plant is announcing the arrival of spring. A naturalist's favorite, this plant blooms in late winter or very early spring. Interestingly, it's a dioecious plant, meaning it has male and female flowers on separate plants. We'll see a couple other dioecious plants in the program. The male flower here on the elbow bush is yellow. Can you see the anthers on the photo with the bee? The female flower is greenish. Can you see the different shape there? That's called the pistil. It's the female flower part. Spring herald is important for early emerging pollinators. It can grow in shade or part sun and can form thickets. Individual plants can range up to 6 feet tall. The Texas mountain laurel is from an ecoregion south of us, but it grows well in our dry alkaline soils. A slow grower, it can be formed into a tree or bush depending on how you prune it. I like the bush look. It will perfume the air with a pleasant scent, and the bees really like it. This breadbud was in full bloom in mid-March. The showy pink flowers precede the leaves. Here you can see a native mason bee enjoying nectar. This tree can grow 15 to 30 feet depending on its environment. This beautiful scene is in my neighbor's yard at dusk. We also have Missouri primrose on our property, but I just absolutely love this picture. It's like stars in the sky. The evening primrose is pollinated primarily by moths. It opens in the evening and closes the next day. If you have an area with sparse vegetation, buy some seeds and feel good about feeding some nighttime pollinators. This beautiful prairie herb, Penstemon cobia, grows in sun and part shade. It is a perennial, growing from 1 to 3 feet tall. It can go dormant in the summer and seems to disappear. It's the larval host for the dotted checker spot butterfly. The nectar of its spring flowers are of special importance to bumblebees, and it attracts a variety of moths. Fragrant sumac is a perennial, deciduous shrub, 3 to 5 feet tall, and it can spread to 8 feet. It's a native of our ecoregion and was a gift of nature in our garden. The yellow spring flowers are produced on female plants, and they're followed by the red spring berries. This wonderful plant is useful for birds, small mammals, and bees. It provides our native bees with nesting structures too. The leaves have lobes of 3, thus the species name, Trilobata. and those leaves can be colorful in the fall. Here's something every gardeners need: autumn sage. It's sometimes called cherry sage and is a mounding shrub 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. A full sun lover, it's a favorite of hummingbirds, bees, and people. In our region in milder winters, it can be evergreen throughout, sometimes even staying in bloom. Typically, however, flowering from spring to frost and in mostly red, it can come in pink, purple, orange, or white naturally. So this drought-tolerant and disease-free plant is a must for all gardeners. Coral honeysuckle is a twining, semi-evergreen vine growing up to 20 feet and is great for arbors. The flower is red on the outside and yellow on the inside, and they bloom from March to June, perfect for hummingbird migrations. Sun or part shade, it requires good air circulation. It tolerates poor soil drainage, but for short periods. So if you have a seep area, it could work. It is a larval host for the spring azure butterfly and the clearwing moth. Remember, if something is eating the leaves, rejoice. Your garden is part of the circle of life. The Mexican buckeye and smoke tree are multi-trunk trees and are great for a property line. Both can grow 15 to 30 feet. Mine have been here for 20 years and are on the smaller side, possibly because they are growing on a limestone shelf. The buckeye has attractive pink flowers that bees love. Then they form persistent and interesting drupes that hold 3 little seeds. The smoke tree has small flowers on the red and purple petioles and give the whole plant a smoke-like appearance. They both like rocky, well-drained, dry soil. The spiderwort is seen often in ditches. This 1 to 3 foot perennial herb blooms in blue, white, pink, or purple from March to June. I've seen it in both dry and seepy conditions, in full sun and part shade. And like the foxglove penstemon, it goes dormant in the summer, only to come back larger and more beautiful every year. Move this beauty all around your garden. The Engelmann's daisy, or cutleaf daisy, is perennial. You can see there from the leaf picture why it would get that name. Nature has generously gifted this to our garden. It can grow 2 feet tall and is often very sprawling. Given some extra water in June and July, and it will continue to bloom. It looks lovely coming into flower as the bluebonnets begin to go to seed. Notice the thicket down the pathway near the front door? Almost all of the plants in there are gifts of nature. This thicket has many species of bushes and trees in a limited area, making it a favorite of birds and small mammals. Roughleaf dogwood, a component of my front door thicket, is a clumping deciduous shrub or small tree up to 16 feet tall. It can take wet to dry conditions. It spreads from root sprouts, making thickets that provide cover for wildlife and birds often nest in here. This beautiful cluster of creamy yellow flowers are a pollinator's dream. Be prepared to do some thinning every year. Here I wanted to show you some close-ups of the flowers and with more butterflies and a bee. And I also wanted you to see the early spring blooms. I've started taking closer looks at those in the spring, and I would encourage you to do the same. It's very satisfying to see how the young leaves unfold. Both of these plants were in abundance on our property long before we came. Nature was smart to put them together. They look great. Pollinators enjoy both. The mealy blue sage can grow 1 to 3 feet tall. We cut it back about halfway or even to the ground in July. This will encourage a second blooming timed for the fall migration of butterflies. The pink evening primrose is often called buttercups by children. The primrose can form beautiful colonies, blooming into July if they're happy. Wine cups. Most of our wine cups are perennials, but we do have an annual species. But tall or short, both are lovely and are nectar sources. These airy and happy plants can bloom spring through summer depending on the species. Possum haw holly. This deciduous tree or shrub can grow 15 to 30 feet tall. It has persistent red berries on female trees, providing winter color. It's a favorite of small mammals and songbirds. It's good in urban setting, and every yard needs one of these. This specimen had just started to leaf out in spring when I watched a flock of cedar waxwing take every berry off this tree in one day. No doubt this fueled their southward journey. Keep in mind that baby birds need insect protein. Their parents do not feed them berries. They cannot eat them. Caterpillars and other insects are on their obligate menu. If your plants have caterpillars on them, rejoice! You are providing food for the young. Green milkweed are in our back wildscape, and it reappeared in our front meadows a few years ago when we changed our mowing schedule to once a year. We mow now in late June or early July after the annuals have seeded. The milkweeds are the host plants to the monarch and queen butterfly caterpillars. Here's our other more prominent milkweed in the yard, the antelope horn milkweed. It's more naturally occurring in our drier front yard meadow. The flowers are so appealing. I really love the pink star shape before it opens, and in the open flower, the star of the individual flowers are very cool. The milkweeds in general are great as a nectar source for a multitude of pollinators. You can see a bee, several butterflies, and some small beetles on this flower. Like the penstemon and spiderwort, this plant will disappear after blooming. Given just the right rain conditions, the milkweeds can make a reappearance later in the year. If you have planted a young one, be patient because it can take several years for the tuber, which is the underground root structure, to get large enough, have enough energy to produce a flower. Blooms on both of these plants begin in May and can continue through the summer months. The yellow sundrops were provided by nature, and their biggest flush of blooms will fade, but some individuals will bloom on and off for months. We planted the red yucca. I think these make a stunning display together. We are now in late spring and moving into the summer. So here we go. Hot fun in the summertime. In summertime, it's good to do some reading in our hot afternoons. Find your next garden using the Wiskowski book, or ID your plants on your outings with the Eason book. And if you're thinking of joining the Native Plant Society of Texas for the first time and live near Fort Worth, I'll tell you how to get a free one of these near the end of the program. The annual firewheel or Indian blanket and a perennial antelope horn are shown here in the front garden in June. The milkweed was a gift from nature, of course, and the firewheels were both present, and we seeded out some extra ones. Another early summer arrangement by nature, the mealy blue sage and Engelmann daisy look very happy together. Early June in the front meadow. Most years this meadow will be mowed by the end of June or early July. The annuals will have gone to seed, as will the perennial milkweeds. Mowing the area keeps it free of woody species, so it remains more prairie-like. Greg Smith's flower is a butterfly magnet and should be in everyone's garden. It begins to bloom in May and continues through the fall. Cutting it back about 1/3 to 1/2 in July will help you have more blooms in the fall when they're needed for the migrating monarchs. This plant is easy to transplant, and with very little effort it can be all over your garden where you have at least 4 hours of sunlight per day. The front porch in June is a parade of prairie annuals. Red is the gaillardia, the purple stacks are lemon horsemint, and the white you see at the back there with fringed purple is a basket flower. Here's a closer look at the basket flower and the lemon horsemint. The basket flower is an annual which grows in profusion in my wildscape. It can also thrive in dry areas with part sun to full sun. Sorry, part shade to full sun. It can make a good cut flower as well. The seeds are readily available in the nursery trade, so there's no excuse. You need to have a basket flower. The lemon horse mint has the square stem of the mint family, and it's common in our Texas prairies, North Texas prairies. It blooms from May to July, and I've heard when watered it will continue to bloom as far as October. We planted over 20 desert willows in our front garden. They can grow to a height of 15 to 40 feet, and the hummingbirds readily utilize them. They are drought tolerant and do not like too much water. Because they are airy and light in form, full sun plants can grow beneath them. They are popular in public landscapes, so be on the lookout for those. The inland sea oats are wonderful in part shade. Plant them under a tree or side of a building. This perennial plant has graceful seed heads that are lovely swaying in the breeze. Their soft brown color is pretty all winter, but after a long winter, they will need to be trimmed to the ground come February. Little bluestem is a useful ornamental bunchgrass for full sun. It's an important prairie grass and good for quail habitat. If you happen to be a steward, which some people call owning, a field of it, let it grow. There is no need to excessively mow. If you do that, they'll disappear. This great grass is a gift from nature in my garden. Passiflora incarnata, called purple passion flower, is shown here with red Turk's cap. Purple passion flower is a perennial vine that can grow up to 25 feet. In North Texas, it'll die to the ground in winter. It will spread, so you want to be sure to put it in a place that will work for you. It is the host plant for the Gulf fritillary butterfly. Be happy when those vines are eaten, and you'll be rewarded with butterflies, and the vines will not suffer. Turk's cap. It's a perennial shrub that will grow in shade or sun and be 3 to 6 feet tall. Its red flowers are attractive to hummingbirds and butterflies. In North Texas, it will bloom from June to October and even into November. It will die back to the ground in winter, so cut the stalks down in late February. It's going to begin to grow back in March, getting large enough to flower in June. Trumpet vine is known to be aggressive. It can grow up to 35 feet and will twine up into trees. I like it on a fence next to an area that will get mowed at least once or twice a month in the growing season. Trumpet vine adds at least 3 feet of height to our fence, providing more privacy. This is one to be careful about, though. It can damage buildings, so keep it off your house, but it is a favorite of bumblebees. It will bloom naturally in red and orange, and it will bloom all summer. Prairie parsley is often called wild dill. It's a favorite of the swallowtail butterfly caterpillars. This biennial herb, and by biennial, botany term, meaning it goes from seed to plant to flower to fruit in 2 years, rather than an annual, which does that cycle in 1 year. So this biennial herb is a great plant to have in your garden and was a gift of nature. It grows to be 2 to 3 feet tall in sun to part shade. Be sure to leave the stalks to overwinter. They will provide homes for some of our native bees. These are fun to have, and they can move around your garden from year to year as they please. Here's a giant swallowtail that I watched emerge from its cocoon. An entomologist told me that it probably spent its entire life cycle in my garden. In June, these lovely perennials grace the back garden. The giant coneflowers, native to East Texas, will reach 3 to 6 feet in height. When the flowers fade, you can leave some on the stalk and cut others lower down at various heights for a tidy look, leaving some stems open for our native bees. Sun and part shade can take moist to dry soil. The bee balm can grow 2 to 5 feet in height. It has aromatic leaves and will attract hummingbirds and bees. This is an area that's always changing. Everything here was planted or seeded except for the pokeweed, which is on the right side of the photo with the broad leaves. The birds planted those. The standing cypress are the tall red flowers that you see. They are native to our ecoregion. They can begin to bloom in late May and continue on through July. The Maximilian sunflower, cenizo, Gregg salvia, and a bur oak are also in view. As the humidity and rain changes, the cenizo and the Gregg salvia bloom on and off. So here's a couple trees that were nature given, and they have super interesting bark. Both are very important to butterfly and birds. The hackberry supports at least 10 species of birds, including robins, mockingbirds, and other songbirds that eat the sweetish fruits. It can also host many species of butterflies, and I've read up to 20. The Hercules Club, so caterpillars eating your leaves, it's a good thing. The Hercules Club, sometimes called the toothache tree, is a host for the swallowtail butterflies. Esperanza, or yellowbills, is an irregularly shaped deciduous shrub. It's normally 3 to 6 feet tall and 4 feet wide. Perennial in our North Texas area, only in protected areas. It's from the ecoregion south of us, so it's not going to tolerate cold areas. But it will tolerate lack of water, so it can grow. It's drought tolerant. It can grow in full sun to part shade. The coneflowers here are a real nectar producer and are loved by many pollinators. For both plants, you can pinch or cut off the faded flowers in the growing season to encourage more flowering. But be sure to leave the last of the season's flowers in the fall on the stalks for nature. The seeds will feed wildlife throughout the winter. This flower bed was a waste of grass on a slope. So using the cardboard newspaper method of smothering the grass, we planted this variety of pollinator plants. The photo is showing this bed in its second year. And then behind there you can see our wildscape. Coneflowers are now a staple in the nursery trade. They are easy to grow and they belong in everyone's garden, as does our native lantana. Take care when purchasing a lantana that you do not get Lantana camera. Read the labels. The camera species is not native and has become a pest invasive plant around our globe. Our native species, Lantana urcoides, is a sprawling plant with yellow and orange flowers. It's good for planting around a mailbox. The dead stalks then should be cut back in February. But it's going to give you months of happy blooms. Button bush. Everybody needs a button bush. This beautiful large shrubby bush can be found around many a lake in North Texas. It will do well in damp spots, but also grow fine without too much water. Growing to 6 to 12 feet in part shade, which is also called part sun, the flowers bloom from June to September, and they're very attractive to pollinators. Birds, especially water and shorebirds, will consume the seeds. Plant this instead of the non-native and invasive vitex. You'll be rewarded with a pleasant scent and an abundance of fun flowers. Here's an area of my garden in the front that is not in the meadow. It is rocky and very dry here. At the front you see the Maximilian sunflower. It has that tropical look to it, but it doesn't require water at all. It's a fall bloomer and it's important for the migratory monarchs. If you have Maximilian sunflower, be careful how much water you give it because they can grow to be 10 to 12 feet tall with too much water. They were here on the property before we were. The seeds of the Maximilian sunflower are important for birds. In the background there you see the seed heads of the Indian blanket, and the orange in the middle there is a planted Asclepias tuberosa. So now we're hitting fall. It might be my favorite season. And that's my dog making scratching noises as he's getting up. Hi, Corey. One of my favorite plants, Eringo, blooms in the fall. It's shown here just starting to turn purple. And in the background, you can see the basket flowers, so we really do have quite a few of them. This fun plant, Eringo, it makes for a good dried flower after it all turns purple. I've read that drying it upside down is the best. You could pair it with Maximilian sunflower for a stunning look. That's what nature does. Zexminia. This small, drought-tolerant shrub is a favorite of many pollinators and people. Here comes Corey shaking his head. Corey, be quiet. Growing in full sun to part shade, Zexminia can be 8 inches to 3 feet tall and up to a 3 foot wide spread. When planting near walkway, be sure you consider this distance. So obviously I didn't at one time and had to move the plant. You will want to plant it 1.5 to 2 feet back from the edge of your walkway. The daisy-like flowers cover the plant from late spring to frost, so it's another 3-season bloomer. Now, and you'll want to cut it back in February and then trim it up throughout the season as needed. Rock rose is another favorite drought-tolerant perennial shrub. It grows 4 by 4 feet and is nicely paired with Zexminia. Rock rose will bloom from April to November. It's happy in sun or part shade and needs well-drained soil. Cut it back in late February and along the way as needed. Perennial fall aster is usually low to the ground, but some of mine are a little bit more upright. It can grow 1 to 2 feet tall and wide. It blooms September through November and is good for sun or part shade. I love it. It's happy and pretty with small flowers that just say fall. Pruning it back 1/3 to 1/2 in June will keep it from getting too top heavy. I never do that. In the early winter, you can prune it back to the rosette. So, that would be somewhere around Christmas time. Snow on the prairie. This fabulous annual was one of the best gifts from nature original to our property. I love it. It starts growing in early spring, so be sure you know what it looks like so you don't weed it out. It will not be happy if you have a well-mulched bed. You won't come back because those seeds need to hit bare ground. Well, you need some open ground anyway for the native ground-dwelling bees, so put it in that bed that you're just not going to mulch. It can form stands of waving. What you see in their white are bracts. They're not really the flower. The flowers are very small and almost inconspicuous. It's a lovely, lovely plant. However, it does have a milky sap that can irritate your skin and eyes, so be careful if you break a stem. And that is also true of the milkweeds or any plant that might have a white, sticky sap. You'd want to keep it away from your skin and eyes. Anyway, this is one of my favorites. Oh, and it can grow 4 to 5 feet tall. Here we have the cenizo. This beautiful perennial bush has several common names. Cenizo, purple sage, Texas ranger, Texas barometer bush, Texas silverleaf, Texas sage. So that's why we have scientific named, folks. Leucophilium fructensis. The bell-shaped pink and lavender flowers bloom in response to the rain year-round, which is why it's commonly called the Texas barometer bush. The soft and silver-gray rounded leaves are borne on stems that can reach up to 8 feet in height and can be 4 to 6 inches in width. So you be sure to plan this for its adult size. In fact, know the adult size of all your plants before you plant them so you'll put them in the right spot. Please do not prune this into balls or squares. This plant looks great in its natural form. Prune judiciously for a beautiful shape. When it's mature, remove about 1/4 of the stems to the ground every year for a fuller look. Now, here's another picture of cenizo with the monarch. These plants are perfect for rocky areas, which we have that in. And I use them with kidney wood, which unfortunately I don't have in my show. But they make it combined with the kidney wood. It makes a really nice polyculture to screen my yard from the street and my home. Here we have a monarch on it in mid-October, and she's fattening up for her trip to overwinter in Mexico. And here's another plant that will fatten up your monarchs. This is one, I have this in several gardens in my, several places around my house. It's a monarch draw, indigo spires. So it has some different stories about its origin, and I'm not sure if it's a natural cultivar or man-made, but it's a fine salvia, and it really draws the pollinators all summer and into the fall frost. It can be 3 to 4 feet wide and tall, with flower stalks up to 12 inches. A midsummer will find us trimming this back along with other plants to ensure that abundance blooms in the fall. Now here's a tree. It's not showy in its fall colors, just kind of fades to yellow a little bit and then turns brown really fast, but they're majestic and long-lived trees, and they deserve a lot of space to grow. So don't plant this unless you have a lot of space, and do put them well away from your home or any building. The large acorns are really fun, and the squirrels are forever having parties with them around our patio, and you know they never clean up. I know. Oh, Corey's complaining. The acorns are useful in crafts too, for wreaths and such for the holidays. All of these naturally grow on our property. The gay feather, which can be found all over Texas in various different species. This particular one only is on a long, slender stalk up to 2 feet tall, and it grows in the dry, rocky areas that we have. All of these are beneficial to wildlife. The same can be said of the fall scarra. However, it's growing 6 to 8 feet tall. And then we'll have the flowers at the end of those long stalks, and they'll gently sway in the breeze. The fall scarra is a tall grass perennial. A tall grass prairie species. And then I wanted to put the blue stem next to it so you could see the luscious russet color of winter. You absolutely must go to the Fort Botanic Gardens Tinsley Garden. It's devoted to regional native plants, and many of them are labeled. If you go every 2 to 4 months, you'll see what different plants are doing in the different season, so be sure to take photos. You're going to find some beauties in this garden. And this little beauty here, the four-nerve daisy, is a garden favorite for many. It mainly blooms March through June, but under the right conditions, it can bloom year-round. I have it growing naturally in my garden, and I have even grown it successfully in pots. So we can have fall colors. If you have a smoke tree, smoke trees are called three-season trees. They're just beautiful with this bright orange and yellow. It's just gorgeous. And the red oaks are pleasing as well, and they go well with the goldenrods. We do have goldenrods in our gardens, but I wanted to show you one here at the Heard Museum. It's shown on a Native Landscaping Certification plant walk at the museum in McKinney. That's one of the programs of the Native Plant Society. And here we've arrived in winter. You know, it's a lovely time to rest and renew ourselves. It's always coldest for us in North Texas in January and February. But winter's when the trees lay their branching structures bare and they let us admire their form. If you pay attention to the shape and form of the branching, along with bark color and texture, along with the ground litter, identifying trees in winter can become a fun hobby. Here's a natural setting in January at Lake Ray Roberts. I would very much like to emulate this in my garden. The golden Indian grass sets off the berries of the possum holly in just a stunning look. The russet and gray colors of winter are very soothing, and the broomweed that you see here was bright yellow in summer with tiny little flowers all over it. So both the blue stem and the broomweed offer the serene and comforting look, while nature is either sleeping or busy planning for spring by growing rosettes and roots. And here we are again in February. After another tour around the sun, um, the Spring Herald is welcoming the awakening bees. Okay, so this is your goal. Go ahead and keep some of those heirloom non-native plants that you love, as long as they're not invasive, and you have 70-80% native plants, life is good. But we do love our irises and grandma's Althea, so if those non-natives are not otherwise harmful, not invasive or harmful, they can stay. They remind us of grandma, right? So a native garden should be drought tolerant by definition, but pay attention to the weather. I will hand water new plants for a couple of years to get them established, and then usually I let them fend for themselves. Unless there's an extended long drought, and then I might supplement if they look like they need help. But the opposite can be true too. We almost lost some desert willows one year because of too much rain. In 2019, we had a very wet spring. Plants put on a lot of vegetative growth, and then we had almost 3 months without rain, a mini drought. The scarlet sage, desert willow, and Turk's cap continued to flower without any help from me. So please continue your self-education by going to our state and local chapter websites and Facebook pages. So there's other conservation groups like Brit and Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center that can offer very good website information, and there are also lots of online classes to attend. In North Texas, we have 7 chapters of the Native Plant Society of Texas. 3 are in the Blackland Prairie, and 4 are in the Cross Timbers and Prairies ecoregion. Our society has several programs that might interest you. The NLCP offers classroom education that qualifies for continuing education units. The NICE program is a cooperative effort with nurseries and growers. And the Bring Back the Monarch program is a garden grant program. You can join online. Go to mpsot.org, have a look around, tap that Join Renew side of their red button, and check out our different membership levels. At $45 per year one, on the individual level, is only $3.75 per month. If you live near Fort Worth or the surrounding area, consider joining the North Central chapter, my home chapter. We offer an incentive book for new members. Join online and the membership committee will contact you about the book you choose. So thank you very much for watching my program. Please contact me if you have any questions. There will be 3 more slides after this because of a glitch that sometimes occurs in the software. It can cut the audio off before the last slide. I'm hoping this will head that off. Here's some different collages of flowers in my garden. The red there is the standing cypress. And then the upper left corner, you can see the underside and top side of a basket flower. So pretty. And here's Miss Maribel. She's Corey's friend and a rescue dog that we have, and she's always very happy exploring our garden. And here's my last slide. I hope you're inspired to plant native plants and that you will join the Native Plant Society of Texas. Thank you so much.